So your goal, whether it's to prevent terror or non-corporate espionage, is to prevent and disrupt operations. So having a system that just allows you to go out and stop that pilot from flying might be mission accomplished.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 251. Are RF detection systems effective in stopping drones? For that question, we turn to Linda Ziemba, founder and CEO of AeroDefense, a New Jersey-based company that provides a proven drone detection solution for locating a drone and pilot simultaneously. The technology is named Air Warden, and it uses passive radio frequency detection methods to detect and locate known and unknown drones without demodulating or decoding signals. The Department of Homeland Security recently recognized Air Warden with a Developmental Testing and Evaluation SAFETY Act designation. The designation provides Air Warden users who choose to take advantage full immunity from liability claims alleging technology failures in the event of a terrorist attack. Air Warden is the first and only drone detection solution to be on the DHS SAFETY Act list of approved technologies. Air Warden is currently deployed at MetLife Stadium and correctional facilities in Georgia and Massachusetts. Linda's experience spans internet security, telecommunications, and entrepreneurship at companies including WebSense, Secure Computing, FinJam, AT&T, and Lucent Technologies. Prior to founding AeroDefense in 2015, she served as a key executive for LiveLook, a collaboration software company. Linda's leadership across sales, marketing, and general operations resulted in numerous contracts with global financial services, telecommunications, and computer firms, and ultimately acquisition by Oracle in 2014. In this edition of the Drone Radio Show, Linda talks about the company's proven Air Warden technology and how AeroDefense pivoted to stay within federal regulations for counter-UAS technology. She also talks about the challenges and opportunities of creating a counter-UAS company. But before we hear from Linda, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. So let's find out how RF detection systems can become part of an effective counter-UAS strategy with Linda Ziemba of AeroDefense. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Linda to introduce herself.
I'm Linda Ziemba, and I founded a drone and a pilot controller detection, location, alert, and tracking company. Our company name is AeroDefense, and we actually represent one of the older firms in this surprisingly super competitive drone detection marketplace.
Linda, give us some background on AeroDefense. First of all, why did you start the company?
At the end of 2015, I saw drones interfere with the California firefighters and with the U.S. Tennis Open, crash landed in the stands, and crash landed at Angela Merkel's speech. My background is internet security, and I thought someone really should do something about this. When I looked at the market, I really only saw some ineffective attempts to repurpose more traditional tools like radar and cameras to detect drones, which is, it's challenging. So with my internet security background, I figured we could build a system that could ethically hack a drone to prevent it from flying into a protected area and even take control of it in like a high-risk zone.
Is your background in this industry?
I had been in communications for a long time in internet security. My thought was we would apply internet security techniques to this drone problem because there are flying computers, more or less. And then by the end of 2016, I had gained an appreciation for all the regulations that govern this space by FAA considering drones aircraft and FCC protecting someone's radio network. And then most importantly, the last one for me, which caused me to pivot the company, was the Department of Justice and the wiretapping laws, which protect the American citizens' privacy rights under the Fourth Amendment.
Tell us about the decision to pivot. What did you learn and what did you do in response?
I researched the regulations one by one and consulted with some very well-informed attorneys from both the government and private industry. When I learned that even a bank can't legally disrupt a rogue network that's on their property, I became a bit concerned. And then when I found out that demodulating the signal between a drone and a controller and extracting information or injecting information would be a violation of wiretapping laws, I said, okay, I've sold a lot of technology over the years, but I really can't sell something that might send me to jail personally and give me catastrophic fines and may cause similar problems for my customers. So I said, okay, what can we do to build a system that doesn't violate those regulations, but provides value, gives customers an early warning and a situational awareness of their airspace?
And that leads into the next question about the technology. It's called Air Warden. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, sir. It is called the Air Warden system. It is a passive radio frequency, or also known as RF, monitoring system that alerts users of the system when a drone flies into a protected space or the controller powers up in the protected space. The product category is broadly known as counter UAS, and UAS stands, of course, for unmanned aerial systems. I think it's really important to note that we do not have mitigation capabilities in our product platform. Our company was named Drone Go Home before we gained this appreciation of the regulations and pivoted to detection only.
What makes Air Warden unique compared to other drone detection systems?
If we're comparing our system to other RF detection systems, ours may be the only one on the market right now to simultaneously detect both the pilot, controller, and the drone. I say may because there are 537 vendors on the market, so it's impossible to keep track of capabilities and the claims. Second, our system produces very few false alarms or false positives, as they're known in the industry. That's when a system detects a signal or triggers a signal and there's really nothing there. Because we developed in the New York metro area, which is very heavy RF environment, we developed in a realistic urban setting, which is where these problems the concerns are going to happen. And we tested for an extensive amount of time in the NFL stadium tailgating, which is a really super extreme RF environment. The third and last differentiator is we also may be the only system on the market to operate as a spectrum analyzer. So we operate on the physical level, which is how we abide by all the regulations. So we don't demodulate. So this physical approach does more than keep us legal. It allows us to detect all types of devices, regardless of the make and model. So we could even detect ground-based. We just look at the physical characteristics.
When you say you're looking at the physical aspects, what does that mean?
If you look at the two types of systems, one, which is the type that the Department of Justice is concerned about, it actually demodulates that signal and extracts things like GPS coordinates or a timestamp of the signal. And that's considered a warrantless search. Ours detects the power level. It just detects the frequency hopping pattern of the drone. And then we would use multiple sensors to trilaterate where that signal originates.
How is Air Warden deployed? What do clients need to do to get it going?
Each sensor both detects and locates the signals. So we would conduct a site survey and select locations that would provide the most advantageous position. So then the client just needs to work with us and we'll install those sensors. We need electricity and network, which can be a wired type of network or LTE. The sensors that get deployed around the perimeter of a property, or if it's a really big property, perhaps in a full-on grid, depends on what their priorities are and what sort of risk they're trying to mitigate. That's the sensor part. And then those sensors communicate back to a command server, command console. And that can be in at the customer's location, one of their existing servers. But you can access the system from any browser. So as long as you've got network permission from a phone or a tablet or a laptop or a 24/7 command center with the big screen on the wall. So we're very flexible in that. One thing we haven't talked about is what happens when a detection occurs.
That's a good question. So what does happen when a detection occurs?
The sensor first determines that there is a signal that matches a drone. Then the sensors work together with the command server and locate where that signal's coming from. And icons are placed on a map of the property. So there'd be either a drone icon or a controller icon. And then the alerts are configurable to a customer's needs. Some of our customers have 24/7 command centers, and the audible and visual alerts are only in the command center. Other customers have no central monitoring capability, so we send text messages and emails with alert and location information.
How accurate are the markers?
We strive to be within 100 meters accuracy. It varies by environment. Our system doesn't require line of sight to a sensor like a radar or a camera system would have to have line of sight to the device in order to detect it and know where it is. Ours does not, but when we don't have line of sight, that may affect the location accuracy somewhat.
What does law enforcement do once Air Warden detects the drone and isolates its position?
At this point, the law enforcement would stay in typically radio contact or cell phone contact with someone who literally had eyes on the screen. We'll have grids that are marked so we can have good communication between someone in the command center and someone who's actually out there on the ground.
As far as testing the system, where and how did that occur?
Well, our first major test was in the Army's Drone Detection Technology Assessment in New Orleans in 2017. Homeland Security observed that test process in preparation for running their own tests later in the year, which we also participated in. That was in Quantico in December of 2017. For a lot of reasons, it's very, very difficult to compare results of drone detection systems. So there really weren't detailed results ever published from those tests.
Is that because of the different approaches and different technologies?
That's a big part of it. And timing, understanding, like each system has timing. So when you just get a big, massive block of data from a given system and try to compare it to another one, it's really tough. So I believe future tests are going to be based more on longer term evaluations. Because for example, at the Quantico test, there were so many vendors that they divided the test into 2 different weeks. Well, now you've got serious weather differences that impact your testability. We actually got sent home a day early because a snowstorm came in.
How did you feel the system performed?
We were actually quite happy. We were able to test some things that would be impossible for us on our own. So some of the challenges of testing are the ability to detect multiple drones and multiple drone types in flight simultaneously. So when you think about that, in order to do that, you have to have a licensed pilot for each drone that you want to fly, and you have to have enough space to set up a system. For us, we're a network of sensors. We're more about setting up a full-on system for evaluation rather than throwing out a single sensor for a demonstration. Even the Federal Bureau of Prisons just released a request for information, and they have come to that conclusion themselves that there really are no valid objective test results. So they're going to conduct their own longer-term evaluations.
Were there any follow-up tests or other evaluation?
We competed and won the business from MetLife Stadium to provide the drone detection technology for the NFL stadium where the Jets and the Giants play NFL football. And we conducted, I can't tell you how many hundreds of hours that I was personally out there doing tests. And they were, in some cases, they were observed and overseen by Rutgers University staff, and in other cases by only the MetLife Stadium personnel. But we conducted at practically every home game in 2018.
When you're looking at facilities like an NFL stadium, does that require a different kind of approach versus other types of major facilities, say like a water treatment plant?
The stadium environment is much more challenging for any sort of drone detection vendor because the environment changes with every event. It's different. There's a different configuration of RVs and buses and television stations broadcasting and fans with their equipment and their live streaming, a lot of light poles. Whereas like at a water treatment plant, you might have a lot more open space. So the urban stadium environment is much more challenging.
How does Air Warden fit into incident command and control?
The way that a stadium would likely use our system, and in the ones that we've seen, the stadium maintains control and notification over the incident, a detection incident. If it's during an event, the stadium will send their personnel to the location where the pilot is, and the state police will meet them there and strongly encourage the person to stop flying.
Can you talk about the number of drone incursions or detections that Air Warden registered over the stadium?
So they don't give us all the information. We know that during one of the events where we were testing, they spoke to 4 pilots and stopped drone flights, but we're not in communication on every event.
Recently, AeroDefense was awarded the Developmental Testing and Evaluation Safety Act designation by DHS. What is that, and why is it significant?
The Safety Act, that's an acronym for Support Anti-Terrorism by Fostering Effective Technologies Act, Safety Act. And that was formed in 2002 in the wake of 9/11. It provides incentives for vendors to develop and deploy anti-terrorism technologies by helping to minimize the risk and the litigation that any business would be afforded.
How does one receive the Safety Act designation?
You have to apply for it. You submit a lot of information about how your product works. You must submit information about successful deployments. And it also has to operate within the regulatory environment. So we underwent a lot of scrutiny.
How do you translate having the SAFETY Act designation into something of value to your clients?
Our clients actually are the ones that encouraged us to obtain this. We were not aware of it. Clients who operate locations, public venues, can also apply for SAFETY Act protection for their venue. But for our product, our customers have the option of participating in the SAFETY Act if they buy our product, and they would receive full immunity. Our liability would be limited to our insurance coverage, and then the federal government steps in and covers it. If a customer is participating with us in the SAFETY Act, they would have no liability in the event that our product fails to detect a drone coming in and a terror attack happens.
In addition to stadiums, what other use cases has Air Warden been used?
It's interesting, just with every good new technology, there's some malicious use of it. It only took about 10 years for airplanes to become weapons when some dude dropped a brick on his neighbor's head. So if you just look around and you can imagine the many different kinds of malicious things a drone could be used for. But the first one, and most of our deployments, are with prisons. So Air Warden is preventing drugs and cell phones and other contraband deliveries from being made.
How big of a problem are drone incursions over prisons?
Our client from the Georgia Department of Corrections, there's a video that you can watch, and he says that every prison facility has a problem. And if you say you don't, then you're just unaware or in denial of the problem. I know of a facility that has had multiple drone delivery failures, and these are not little drones with like a bag of weed they're delivering. This was a big matrice drone, which is a big one. It was carrying about 20 pounds of contraband in a contractor garbage bag. And a couple of times, 2 or 3 times for sure, that we're aware of, got hung up on the barbed wire, bringing it into the facility. That could be because the pilot underestimated the impact of weight on the drone or whatever, but it's definitely a big problem, and it's probably underreported either because they're unaware or because they want to keep the problem a little bit quiet.
Well, I guess prisons were built to keep people in, not to worry about things coming from the outside.
Right, and the protections were all two-dimensional in the past. They weren't designed for this risk from the sky, and it's just a whole new threat vector.
What can you tell us about the performance of Air Warden over prisons?
What I can tell you is that the system was tested in the beginning, we believe, by the people that would be delivering contraband. And we eventually stopped a contraband delivery and confiscated over $500,000 worth of heroin and cocaine, crystal meth, marijuana. Subsequent delivery attempts happened, but the bottom line is, after a few failed attempts and loss of product, the drone delivery attempts have essentially stopped at the prison that's deployed this system and evaluated it. So it's quite effective in stopping contraband from coming into the prison.
How do you plan to scale the system?
The Air Warden system can be deployed completely at our customer's location. And in fact, there are a number that want to retain that data. So there's not really a load necessarily on AeroDefense. That being said, we are working with a series of resellers and installation partners who can help us scale more quickly as we start to take off in 2020.
Is it difficult for the client to master?
The Air Warden system was designed with non-technical user in mind. So it's very simple. You look at a map of the property, there's an alert that goes off, and the command center deploys their staff. So they really don't, our staff, for other than typical support, maintenance, updates, those kinds of things.
What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs?
Well, the first thing that I would advise anybody is to build a team and find some really smart and very nice and very proactive people to work with. Because otherwise it's just impossible, because everything changes so much and is very competitive.
What was your greatest challenge?
My greatest challenge was understanding and working within the regulatory environment when others were not.
What advice would you give to women in this industry?
This is new emerging technology, so learn the technology, get some equipment of your own. And if you're really in the drone space, become a licensed pilot and understand that regulatory environment. Because I got to tell you that the regulatory environment was our greatest challenge. It may ultimately be the thing that's really differentiating our company, because we learned it, we respected it, and now we're one of the few systems that can be legally operated.
While others might be looking for changes in the regulations, it sounds like you focused on what you could do within the current regulatory framework.
We took that early on. We pivoted at the end of 2016 to work within the regulatory environment, because when I realized that privacy rights were one of the three main factors, and you've got the FAA, the FCC, and the Department of Justice, and the thought of getting three major organizations to change regulations that major financial companies couldn't change to prevent rogue network attacks and throw in privacy, I figured I would be long gone before that happens.
Other than the regulatory limitations, what are some of the challenges in the counter-UAS industry?
I think that there are people who are advocating for mitigation capabilities, which I don't believe will be reasonable or could cause more safety issues than the errant drone itself. I mean, if you think about it, a drone pilot who's a photographer who goes and applies and gets the rights to fly over an event, let's say, to film it for the event management, how does someone with a drone mitigation capability, which could cause the drone to fall out of the sky and land in a barbecue and explode or whatever, how does the person determine whether it's friendly or not friendly? It's really complex environment. When I give presentations, I always say this. I'm like, all right, let's just wave the magic wand and say, okay, now everybody's got drone mitigation and you can take the drones out of the sky if they're coming over your space and you feel it's appropriate. If you're a corporation, I have my doubts that your legal counsel and your insurance carrier are going to allow you to take the risk of taking down the wrong drone or taking down a drone that is a threat, that may be carrying an explosive device. As soon as you take control of that drone, guess who's liable for any damage that's caused by that drone? It's the person who takes over control. So I think in the end, the attorneys and the insurance companies will severely limit that capability.
Did you ever think about the military market?
That's a very interesting question. We did make a conscious decision not to go into military for a couple of reasons. Our assumption was, well, they're the military. They've already got all these advanced tools and they don't have to abide by the privacy regulations that everyone else does. We have, in recent months, begun to talk with some military folks, and much to our surprise, they're very interested in a legal system that doesn't have mitigation capability. And the reason for that is when our military is in a war zone, then sure, you can use any tool that they have at their disposal, and the country's laws are, not really relevant. However, if you're in an allied country with U.S. troops, that allied country doesn't want you bringing in tools that can demodulate signals and extract information or take drones out of the sky to violate their laws. So we are actually starting to talk with some military folks.
What advice would you give to asset managers that are looking for counter UAS solutions?
An important thing I would say to anyone considering purchasing counter UAS is to really think about your risk and where you believe the threat's coming from, and then choose a system that addresses as many of those challenges as possible. There's no system that's the silver bullet. If RF detection, you think that the drone threat is mostly from that, then an RF system alone may do the trick for you. However, if you think that you've got really serious terrorist level threats flying drones that don't use RF, then you should probably consider that multi-layer, more expensive system.
Who's your ideal client?
Oh, it's interesting. We're talking to so many different industries, certainly correctional facilities, stadiums, power authorities. The power grid is certainly something that needs to be protected. Oil and gas refineries. There have been numerous attacks in the Middle East on refineries. So I would just say anyone who's already very security conscious, if you've made an investment in perimeter fences and cameras, then you probably need to consider drone detection because it's an aerial threat now.
And for my final question, Linda, what message would you like to leave listeners regarding AeroDefense and its role in the counter-UAS industry?
AeroDefense's role in the counter-UAS industry is to provide a system that's affordable and legal and simple for security staff to use. We don't believe that you should have to go through specialized training to interpret results in order to have an effective drone detection system. And one thing that I've heard potential customers say as well, until I can do something about this drone problem, I'm not going to do anything. The reality is a terror attack is going to follow the same mission planning as any other attack. The bad guy's going to go and do some test flights at the events before they actually fly the terror mission. So your goal, whether it's to prevent terror or non-corporate espionage, is to prevent and disrupt operations. So having a system that just allows you to go out and stop that pilot from flying might be mission accomplished.
That's it for episode 251 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Linda Ziemba of AeroDefense. I want to thank Linda for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about AeroDefense or want to connect with Linda, check out the website at aerodefense.com. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll download more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.